There's something buried in my garden right now. Something I put there months ago. I haven't watered it since. No irrigation system, no hoses, no timers. And yet, there are tomatoes growing, squash pushing through the soil, roots going deep on their own. If you walked past it, you'd think someone was tending this every day. No one is. What you're looking at is a garden that waters and feeds itself. And the reason it works has nothing to do with technology or clever gadgets. It's buried wood. That's it. Old logs, broken branches, pieces of tree that were going to rot on the ground anyway. I buried them, I planted on top, and then I walked away. There's a name for this, and people have been doing it for centuries without ever calling it anything at all. The practice has a German name, Hügelkultur. Roughly translated, it means mound culture, but the technique itself is far older than the word. Indigenous farmers in the Amazon were building raised beds over buried organic matter long before European contact. Traditional European peasant farmers in the Middle Ages used decomposing wood to enrich their plots. Sepp Holzer, an Austrian farmer who grew food at high altitude where most said it was impossible, built his entire system on this principle. And yet, somehow, in an era of drip irrigation and smart sensors and hydroponic towers, most people have never heard of this. The soil remembers what we've forgotten. Here's what's actually happening underground. When wood decomposes, it becomes something extraordinary. It becomes a sponge. You've seen this before, even if you didn't notice it. Think about a fallen log in a forest after rain. Lift it. The soil beneath is dark and wet, long after everything around it is dried out. The wood drew the moisture in, it held it there, slowly, quietly. Now imagine that buried under your garden. When it rains, or when you water once, the buried wood absorbs that moisture like a reservoir. Then, over days and weeks, it releases it back upward, directly into the root zone of whatever is growing on top. The plant doesn't wait for rain. It draws from what's already there. And as the wood continues to break down, it releases nutrients, slowly, continuously, like a compost pile that never needs turning. The roots find it. They follow it. They go deeper than they ever would in flat soil. This is not chemistry. This is not engineering. This is just what wood does. So how do you actually build one? You don't need to buy anything. You don't need to measure anything precisely. This is forgiving by design. First, gather your wood. Old logs work best. The more rotted, the better. Broken branches, stumps, even pieces of untreated lumber. Avoid wood from black walnut or cedar, as they release compounds that can suppress plant growth. Everything else is fair territory. Second, choose your location, a spot that gets good light. Nothing else matters much at this stage. Third, dig a shallow trench, about 30 to 40 centimeters deep, maybe 2 meters long, a meter wide. But even smaller works. There's no minimum. A hole the size of a bathtub is enough to get started. Fourth, layer the wood at the bottom. Bigger logs first, then smaller branches on top. Fill the gaps loosely, don't compact anything. Fifth, cover with organic matter. Leaves, straw, grass clippings, kitchen scraps without meat, anything that will eventually become soil. Sixth, cover with the soil you removed from the trench. Mound it up slightly above ground level. The bed will settle over time. Seventh, plant directly into it. Or wait a few weeks if you want the bed to settle first. Water it once, well, at the beginning, and then let it be. The most common mistake is using fresh green wood. Fresh wood is still alive in a sense. It competes with your plants for nitrogen as it begins to break down. This is called nitrogen drawdown, and it can stunt plant growth in the first season. Use wood that's already begun to soften. Wood that crumbles slightly at the edges when you press it. That wood has already crossed the threshold. It's giving now, not taking. The second mistake is building too small and giving up too soon. A tiny bed will dry out faster. The larger the buried wood mass, the more consistent the moisture retention. If you can go a meter deep, do it. If you can only go 30 centimeters, that still works. Just with a little more attention in the first dry season. The third thing people overlook is the surface covering. Bare soil is the enemy of moisture retention. Mulch, the top, straw, wood chips, dry leaves. This slows evaporation dramatically. The combination of buried sponge below and mulch above, that's where the system becomes truly self-sustaining. One more thing. Don't plant heavy feeders in the first year. The bed is still establishing itself. Squash, pumpkins, nasturtiums, potatoes, they thrive in this environment from the start. Tomatoes and peppers benefit more in year 2 and beyond when the decomposition is more advanced. Let's be honest about what to expect. In the first season, the bed may underperform slightly compared to a well-fertilized conventional garden. This is normal. The system is building itself below ground. By the second season, the difference becomes clear. Plants root deeper. They withstand dry spells better. They require less from you. By the third season, in many climates, this bed will go weeks without irrigation and show no stress, not because of drought tolerance, but because the underground reservoir is simply doing its job. In wetter climates, the benefit is consistency. Plants that would normally drown in heavy rain thrive here because the buried wood absorbs excess water and releases it slowly. In drier climates, the benefit is endurance. Water stored from the last rainfall is still available 2 weeks later. This is not a miracle. The soil still needs to be cared for. The plants still need sunlight. But the constant maintenance of watering, the anxiety of forgetting, that part fades. Here's the thing that stays with me. Every forest floor is already doing this. Every single day, in every temperate forest on Earth, fallen wood is decomposing underground. Fungi are threading through it, breaking it down, moving nutrients through invisible networks to the roots of trees. The forest doesn't irrigate. It doesn't fertilize. It doesn't need anyone to manage it. It has a system, a buried, ancient, self-regulating system, and that system is running on exactly the same principle you would put in your backyard. We look at wild forests and think, that's nature, that's different. But it isn't different. It's the same wood, the same soil, the same water, the same roots. We just forgot that we could borrow the method. A few things worth knowing before you build. If you're in an area with persistent slugs or snails, the moisture the system retains can attract them. Mulch, with something coarse on the surface, wood chips rather than straw, and this reduces the problem significantly. If you're building on a slope, run the bed across the slope rather than down it. This turns the bed into a passive water catchment system, slowing runoff and directing it downward into the wood. In very hot climates with intense sun, consider a low cover crop or ground cover around your main plants. The goal is to never let the surface soil bake and crack. Mulch alone often isn't enough in extreme heat. And if your wood was sourced from an old garden or orchard, make sure it carries no history of persistent chemical treatment. Untreated wood only. That's the one real rule. Everything else is flexible. The system is forgiving almost by design. I think about what's happening under this garden sometimes. The wood I buried, it's slowly disappearing. Year by year, it becomes something else. It becomes the dark, crumbling soil the roots are threading through right now. It becomes the moisture the plant draws on during a dry week in August. It becomes food. And it does all of this without being asked. There's something quietly extraordinary about that. The idea that what we think of as waste, dead branches, fallen logs, the debris of a storm, is actually some of the most productive material we can return to the earth. We live in a time when growing food feels complicated, expensive, technical. And maybe some of it is, but some of it was always this simple. The forest has been doing it without us for a very long time. We just needed to look down.